What makes a game an Assassin's Creed game? This question hit many people after the release of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Many people like that game, many others bash it for not being an Assassin's Creed game. And after that controversy and discussion in the community, people looked back on the previous AC games and started to think, are all those an Assassin's Creed games? I won't answer that today, but I want to discuss it with you and highlight core elements that the game must have to earn the title of an Assassin's Creed game. Before we start, I encourage you to like this video, and after you watch it, consider checking other my videos about Assassin's Creed series, maybe even subscription to my library. But enough of that YouTube mumbling. Let's dive into essential elements of Assassin's Creed series. Oh, and last quick note, this is a subjective list, so order of those elements doesn't matter. Number 1. The universe. The first and most obvious essential element is that the game is set in Assassin's Creed universe. But what does that actually mean? Well, first we need a resemblance of our world. Second, we need assassins and templars, or their proto-versions, to fight each other. Assassins for freedom and templars for control. Both have the same goal, the well-being of the human race. The first ones think humanity needs to advance at their own pace, representing chaos. Second represents order and control over mankind to make us prosper. The assassins must be organized in brotherhood, and Templars must have their own order, with a rank system that assassins try to abuse during the game. But wait, there is more! The AC universe has its own supernatural element, Isu and their artifacts. They also must be somehow present in the world, influence it, and change our view to legends and myths. If all that is present, we can check the first box about essential element number 1, the universe of Assassin's Creed. Number 2. The conflict. Second check is the conflict between assassins and Templars. The Templar Order tries to dominate the world and gain total influence over the certain region, and assassins are trying to stop them. Both sides have their own historical figures that either belong to one of those two groups or actively help them. Most of the time, the conflict is not only about influence and reign over the entire region or even the world, but often they fight each other over Isu's artifacts or something that is their heritage. So if we see the conflict, we can check the second box and go straight to the third essential element. Number 3. Isu. I know we talked about them in the essential number 1, but even if you go back to first Assassin's Creed, they are there, or at least their artifacts, which we call Pieces of Eden. It's vital for Assassin's Creed games to have those. Apples, staffs, observatory, you name it. The plot of the Assassin's Creed game has to revolve somehow around the precursors. This supernatural element spices everything up, make the stakes of Assassins vs Templar war more desperate, more dramatic. Even at first, if we don't see it, we can be sure that the Isu element is somewhere out there, and sooner or later we encounter it. At first there were only apples, but to be honest, I'm glad that the Ubisoft has expanded the number and the types of artifacts we can see in those games, sometimes even referring to legendary items that today are considered as myths. So let's check the third box and let's go further. Number 4. Modern story. Most of an Assassin's Creed game takes place in the past, but AC games need more. Some portion of the story must take place in our times. This is something that connects games together. One big story that is happening right now, but behind the curtains, yet almost in front of our eyes. Modern story should be somehow connected to the past to justify using an animus. It gives us players extra motivation to follow the steps of the long dead characters, looking for something they met in their lifetime. So we tick the fourth and the final checkbox that is about narrative. Now let's go to the flesh of every game, mechanics and gameplay. Number 5. Mechanics. Mechanics is a broad topic, but I think all those core gameplay elements should fall under this one category. And what do I mean by mechanics? First, the parkour. This is one of the most iconic mechanics of Assassin's Creed. Jumping, climbing on the buildings, jumping to haystacks, that is bread and butter of an AC game. Second is the social stealth, the fulfillment of the second rule of Assassin's Creed. Hide in plain sight, be the one with the crowd. This has always been part of being an assassin. Benches, crowds, you name it. You should have the opportunity to blend into the crowd and hide from the guards. Third is synchronization. Now almost every open world Ubisoft game has some variation of it, but it all started in 2007 with the first Assassin's Creed. Some people say it's dated, that it's boring climbing to sync points, but let's be honest, there is no AC game without this mechanic. Last mechanic I think is core to Assassin's Creed games is eagle vision. This is described as a sixth sense, a rare skill that manifests itself in different ways. Most of the time in games we see this as a literal vision with highlighted enemies and targets, but Arno's ability to see memories of his targets, that was eagle vision too. And I think that's all mechanics that are essential to AC games. Now we need to talk about last but not least element. Number 6. Gear. What I mean by saying gear is hidden blade and the hood. Hood is pretty obvious. Cover your face so you can hide and run away from the guards. But hidden blade is I think the most iconic thing people see in their minds when they are thinking about Assassin's Creed. There were many variations to this weapon, but one thing is clear. It has to be mounted to one's forearm and must be extendable. It would be nice that the wound dealt by it was always fatal. And of course, the target to assassinate must be struck with this particular weapon. And that's all essentials that make a game an AC game. If you disagree with my list or wanna add something to it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed the list, consider liking this video and subscribing to my library for more things connected to Assassin's Creed. And as always, stay tuned for more.